بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له. أشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صفيه من خلقه وخليله وأمين على وحيه. ربنا إننا سمعنا مناديا ينادي للإيمان أن آمنوا بربكم فآمنا. ربنا فاغفر لنا ذنوبنا وكفر عنا سيئاتنا وتوفنا مع الأبرار. ربنا وآتنا ما وعدتنا على رسلك ولا تخزنا يوم القيامة إنك لا تخلف الميعاد. Be respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And inshallah we continue our series trying to better understand our deen and better understand our life and try to leverage our deen to fix our life. That's the duty of believers at all times and all places. Wherever they are, believers are expected to make an effort to understand their world, their reality, their society, understand their deen, and then leverage the deen to fix reality or to make things better. By now, I think there are a number of things that became very clear, and we probably all converged towards them. One is that the version of Islam that we have does not come close to the true Islam that was preached by Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We have discussed this in this session, in this class, and in khutbah. Whether you compare it by the results, what the deen of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam did, and the current version is doing, whether you want to go back to the Quran and see what are the tasks that Allah has assigned to believers and check whether we are doing them or not, whether you want to compare it to the expectations, how Quran describes believers and the community of believers, and compare it to our situation, whether you want to compare it to the model of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his community, which is meant to be a model. Always you come to the conclusion that there is something that is seriously wrong in the way we understand our deen. Seriously wrong. And it's not minor. There are some things that are essential in this deen. They are absent now, or they are neglected. There are things that are minor in this deen. Now they became huge. They were blown out of proportion to the point that people can fight over these minor issues, even though in Islam they are minor. Missing elements, essential elements reduced, minor elements blown out of proportion. So the whole thing ended up very twisted, the faith that we have. Alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserved the Quran, so we can always go back to the roots. And like other religions, where the books itself, the source itself were twisted or altered, then that's a big problem. Alhamdulillah, Allah promised to preserve this Quran, and it is. So we always can go back to the pure Islam and to the roots of Islam, and that's what we need to do. One of the essential things that is missing in our understanding of Islam is that Islam was introduced by Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, accepted by the companions as what? As a mission. Islam was not presented as a religion, it was presented as a mission. It's a life mission. It's something that you live for. It's something that you commit, you dedicate your life for it. It's not something that is on the side. So it was presented from day one as a mission. And the Rasul ﷺ asked for full commitment. So full commitment to a mission, to Islam as a mission. Nowadays Islam is introduced as what? As a religion, maybe as a way of life, which means something that you apply in your life. So religion and way of life versus mission. What this mission is about? One word. Islah. This mission is Islah. Islam is a mission of Islah. Islah translates into betterment. So Islam came to do what? To make things better, to make people better people, and to make society better society. That's what Islam came to do. Uplift people, what does it mean, better societies? More just, more prosperous, more peaceful, etc. You name it. More morally sound. It's a better society. That's what Islam came to do. That's the job of Muslims to do. So Muslims are here to make, whatever they settle, they make things better. That's the concept of Amr bil Ma'ruf wa Nahy al Munkar. Beautiful concept. In Quran, emphasized tremendously, called enjoining that which is good, forbidding that which is evil. What does it mean? You increase the good and you try to reduce the evil or whatever is wrong. That's how you make things better. It's not even change, it's just increasing the good and reducing that which is wrong. Enjoining that which is good and forbidding that which is evil. That's what makes this community special. The moment we stop doing that, then we lose that special status. And with it, we lose the help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because that help from Allah is conditional. You do the job, you get the help. You do the job to the best of your ability, and then if your efforts is not enough, Allah will help you and guide your steps. So it is a mission of making things, making people better people, and making society better. How people are made better people? There is also one word. Tazkiyah. See, Islam will talk about, it's not, even though it is very broad and deep religion, but very simple. It boils down to some key words. Islah, Tazkiyah. It's a mission of Islah. How people are made better, what's the mechanism Islam makes people better, is Tazkiyah. What is Tazkiyah? It's translated into self-development. You develop yourself. To do what? To be all you can be. To realize all the potential that Allah has given you. Allah creates people with tremendous potential. But that potential is raw. It's like the petroleum or the oil. It has to be processed. So you have a lot of potential. But unless you cultivate it, it's useless. You cultivate your physical potential by workout. You cultivate your intellectual potential by reading and thinking and discussing. That's how you cultivate your potential, intellectual potential, etc. You name it. Tazkiyah. That's self-development. So what is the prime responsibility of a believer? Develop yourself into role model. To develop yourself into role model. You can see nowadays many people who claim to be Muslims are focusing on what? On themselves or focusing on others? They're focusing on others, focusing on judging you, whether you are a good Muslim or not. While this deen tells us to focus on yourself. Make yourself a better person. Develop yourself into a role model. That's your prime responsibility. And that's the key to anything else. Nothing else can be done out of the mission of Islam unless you do this. So the first responsibility of a believer is to develop yourself into a role model. Self-development includes what?
Mentorship.
No. Self-development includes what? Means you work on what? How do you become a better person? You work on your personality, character, skills, knowledge, behavior, ibadah, you name it. Your health, your finances, your career, everything. That's self-development. To be all you can be. Work on your worship to perfect it, your character, your skills, your knowledge, your career, your finances, your health. All these needs plans so that you are constantly improving. So a true believer should be constantly improving. And we have came to conclusion that no improvement without effort, and this effort starts with what? Knowledge, reading. Because how do you improve? You improve by implement what you learn. So if a Muslim is not learning, then this Muslim cannot be improving. There is no way you improve without learning. You want to become a better spouse, you read. You want to become a better parent, you read. You want to become better at anything, you just have to read. You want to improve your health, you read. You read about diet, nutrition, exercise, etc. So anything you want to improve requires reading. And nowadays, you can see Muslims are probably the least among all nations who read. So reading tells you that's an indication that we don't understand our religion, because if we understand it, the chain leads us to be people who are constantly learning. Rasulullah ﷺ described it beautifully when he said, Al-hikmatu dhallatul mu'min. Wisdom. You know, when you lose something, you always keep thinking about where did you forget it, and calling left and right and lost and found, etc. Busy trying to find it. That's how Rasulullah ﷺ described the wisdom for a believer. That's how Rasulullah ﷺ described wisdom for a believer. It's something that you lost and you are looking for it everywhere. Wherever you find it, you take it. إِنَّمَا وَجَدَهَا فَهُوَ أَحَقُّ النَّاسِ بِهَا. Rasulullah ﷺ says that Muslim is constantly looking for wisdom. And how do we learn? There are only two ways you can learn. The books you read and the people you know. They said that you learn from the books you read and the people you know. And also, you learn from life experience. If you know how to do self-assessment, when you go through experience, good or bad. Actually, most people, they learn from bad experience more than even from good experience. If you do assessment and evaluation, you can draw a lot of lessons from life experience. That's how you improve. We said mission of Islam is about Islah. Mechanism of Islah, betterment for individual, is tazkiyah, self-development. There is another mechanism which is mentorship. That's how we help each other improve. Also comes under tazkiyah in Islam. The word tazkiyah in Islam has two meanings. It's self-development when you do it for yourself. It's mentorship when you do it for somebody else. You see how important this word, that you rarely hear it among Muslims in our language, even though it's essential in Islam. And what is the Arabic definition of tazkiyah is what? إبلاغ الشيء كماله. Translate, to help people realize their full potential. That's what they say today, self-development is so that you realize your full potential. You be all you can be. That's what tazkiyah is all about. So that's the mechanism of improving ourselves and improving each other, especially as Muslims, because you cannot talk about mentorship outside, mostly about among Muslims. What's the mechanism to improve, to have a positive influence on people around us?
Good role models.
Role models and interaction. So that role models is isolated, it will have no effect on people. So it is role models. You can see how connected things are. You develop yourself into role models, that's how you improve yourself. How you can have positive influence on people? By social interaction. So by definition, a Muslim cannot be isolated. By definition, Muslim cannot be socially isolated. What do you see today? Most Muslims are socially isolated. Why? Because they misunderstand their religion. If I don't understand Islam as a mission that is about having positive influence on people, why should I interact with people? Become optional. But if I understand Islam as a mission to have positive influence on people, then social interaction becomes a must. ما لا يتم الواجب إلا به فهو واجب. Anything, if there is a must deed that requires a condition, that condition becomes also a must. Why? Because it is required for a must deed. So the mechanism of improving ourselves is tazkiyah. Mechanisms of improving people, mentorship, that's among Muslims. Outside, social interaction with people. And that's what we missed, by the way. For a long time, how do we understand da'wah? We understand da'wah as giving people flyers, literatures. So presenting people theoretical Islam. That never worked and never will. Why? Because everybody is saying very good things about their religion. So you're not getting anything new. Somebody will, especially nowadays, you give somebody a flyer that says Islam is a peace. What comes to their mind? The pictures they see on TV. See, what are you talking about? So Islam, so far, it is being presented as a theory. That's why it didn't work. How it should be presented? Models. So you embody Islam and then you market it by interaction. That's the most effective way. Why do we interact with people? To convert them? No. That's not our job. So let's take this out of our mind. It's not to convert people. We interact with people because we belong to the same family. Because we are a member of a huge family called humanity that has one father and mother. And Allah says in the Quran, إِنَّا خَلَقْنَاكُم مِّن ذَكَرٍ وَأُنثَى وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا. We created you out of single pair of male and female, made you into nations and tribes so that you know each other. Just know people. Don't judge them. Don't think about converting people. It's just all what we are asking when you interact with people is what? Mutual understanding and respect. That's all. And what we should focus on when we interact with people? Focus on mutual understanding and mutual respect. Focus on what is common. Focus on the commonality. You are a human being, you are a citizen, fellow citizen, you are neighbors, you are colleagues, that's what is common. Religion is not common. So it has to be put aside because it's not common. If you bring religion, then you will sever the relationship because that's not common. So focus on commonalities and just be yourself. So what is da'wah in this? Da'wah is in that interaction. If you are a good representative of Islam and you're interacting with people, you represent Islam in the best possible way. So that people, even if they don't accept it, at least they will respect it. They will respect this faith because of you. And be prepared. If people ask about your faith, you should be ready to present it. Shouldn't be confused. It's very embarrassing for someone who cannot explain their religion. Very bad. What kind of religion that you cannot explain? So you should be well prepared, if asked, to tell people about your faith. Hopefully, your behavior, your character will attract people to ask about the faith. And that will be the best opportunity for you to credit everything good in you to Allah. That's what Yusuf alayhi salam did in jail. They noticed that something special about him. They came to him. And then when they asked that we see you different and special, he didn't say that's because of my family. He said that's because of my faith, because of my deen. The last aspect of Islah is what? Talking about people becomes better by tazkiyah and by mentorship. Having positive influence on people around you through social interaction. How can we have a positive influence on the society at large? Civic engagement. You have to be civically engaged, involved in the affairs of the society. That's the only way you can make any difference. So a Muslim, by definition, cannot be disengaged. You cannot say that's none of my business. What's going on in the city or in the state, that's none. You can't. It's not up to you. Why? Because your mission is to make things better. The mechanism to improve society is civic engagement. So we ended up with how many concepts? Mission of Islam is Islah. That Islah, practically, the mechanism of betterment of individuals is Tazkiyah, with both self-development and mentorship. The mechanism to have a positive influence on people is social interaction. The mechanism to have positive influence on the society is civic engagement. That's it. So a Muslim who is civically disengaged, a Muslim who is socially isolated, a Muslim who is not improving is someone who has missed the whole point, regardless of how much they pray and how much they fast and how much they do all of this. They miss the essence of Islam. Until very recently, until now, in the minds of many Muslims, who is the ideal Muslim?
The guy who sits in the mosque.
The guy who doesn't interact with anybody, very isolated, very disengaged. That's we call them pious. Is a person who is very pious because he doesn't interact. That has to change. That's totally wrong. Now, what are the motivations in addition to the faith itself? The religion will motivate us to do this. The other mechanisms that motivate people to fulfill the mission of Islam are compassion. If you are not compassionate toward people, you will not interact with them. Compassion. Islam, by definition, Muslim is compassionate, very compassionate. Rahim. That's how prophets dealt with their people. Very compassionate. Caring. These are your people. These are not kafir. These are not the non-Muslim. These are your people. Leave the judgment for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are your people. And that is your country. There is no way you can be civically engaged, you can be motivated to be civically engaged if you don't think that the country is yours. So it's very essential that we promote these concepts among believers, especially future generations. Compassion, Islam is very compassionate faith. It's very unfortunate nowadays, it's not the case. Nowadays you see compassion is associated with which faith? Christianity. Right? It's very sad because when you read the Quran, it's full of compassion. Allah loves people. The prophets love their people. It's a very, very compassionate faith. So a Muslim, by definition, if you understand this deen properly, you should be very compassionate toward people. Even if they do wrong, yes, even if they do wrong. And I mentioned the example in Jumu'ah, those of you who were here, I said, when you deal with somebody who is doing something wrong, you don't like what they do. You don't hate the person. You don't like what they do. It's like when you see your child is about to hurt himself. What do? You stop or you save the child. Not you don't hate the child. That's the same attitude towards somebody who is doing something wrong. Because anything that Islam has forbidden is harmful. When people do it, they hurt themselves. But when you see somebody hurting himself, you don't hate him. You wish that he will stop. You want to extend your hand to save. So even if people do something very bad, you hate or you don't like what they do. You don't hate people. What's the difference between the two? If you hate what they do, you try to correct it. If you hate the person, you don't react. You kill him. And they're killing. That's what's going on. That's what's happening. And you know what? That killing, where it starts, this terrorism, where it starts in the beginning. It starts with this judgmental attitude that somebody appoints himself to judge people. That has to be taken care from the rules. There is no judgment in Islam. That's something Allah reserves for Himself. So let's stay away from it. Let's stay away. You don't know what people do in their private life, good or bad. You don't know, you don't have access to their hearts. So you're not equipped to judge people. Leave it. That's something that Allah reserved for Himself. Your job is to help. Your job is to guide. Your job is to serve. Allah reserved for Himself the task of judging. So no judgmental attitude in Islam. Stay away from this Muslim, that's kafir, this is good Muslim, that's a bad Muslim, that's practicing Muslim, that's non-practicing Muslim, that's none of our business. It's not our business to judge, it's not our business to convert. You want to do something to people? Help, guide, serve. That's all. You're not, and learn from them. And you can learn from anybody. So compassion is essential. I'm trying to draw the picture of the ideal Muslim, which was twisted in our minds for a long time. It's someone who is very compassionate. And the Muslim is someone who is very patriot. It's not true that because Islam is a universal religion, that people are not expected to be loyal to their country. It's not true. It's totally wrong. Loving own country is natural feeling. Islam never suppresses natural feeling. Does this apply only to Muslim countries? No. It applies to any country. You love your country, you love your people regardless. Regardless of who you are. You have to be a faithful citizen, loyal. And the Muslim should never do something that is harmful to his people, or to his country, or to anybody. Now imagine these concepts are spread among Muslims. Are you going to find somebody who's going to kill his colleagues, or kill his neighbors, or kill his fellow citizen, or kill anybody? Are you going to find somebody who's going to destroy something in their own country? Never. Or in any country. If the mission of Islam is about Islah, how can a Muslim be force of destruction? You can't. And as the brother said like a couple of weeks ago, said in Muslimu, Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam defined, "Man salima Muslimuna man salima min yadi min lisanihi wa yadihi." That Muslim should not be hurting, shouldn't hurt anybody. So this is, in brief, encapsulating what we have been talking about all along. And then I hope that you appreciate how much effort we need to do to rediscover our faith. Because our faith was twisted, hijacked, lost, the true faith. And we ended up with something that is, again, it looks like Islam that was preached by Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In appearance, they look the same. But in essence, there is no comparison. And nowadays, it's no longer an option to discover our true faith. Why? Because we have a whole generation that is at risk. What are the options in front of future generations nowadays?
Be a terrorist or be mulhid.
Abandon religion or fall into extremism. Why? Because the version of Islam that we have, they are not accepting it. Make no mistake about it, and they will not accept it. Young people here will not accept the version of Islam that we settled with. These people have a lot of energy, a lot of aspiration, a lot of ambitions. They don't find it in this Islam. This Islam is actually limit them, confuse them, the version of Islam that we have. So, if they are not accepting this version of Islam, what options left? Abandon their religion, and many of them are already. Or now there is this new option, which is each one is worse than the other, which is fall into extremism and terrorism. And it's very accessible, it's online. Very accessible for people to find. So unless we do our job, unless we do our homework to discover the true Islam and present it to, especially to young people, and I'm telling you they will love it, because the true Islam is very inspiring, it's very empowering, it's very motivating, it's a great faith, it's something that will jump on it. Unless we do our job to discover rediscovered that true faith and present it to them, we have a whole generation that is at risk. I'm going to stop here, and as we promised, we're going to make it more interactive. So we're going to take some questions and comments, and then we have a question from last time about what should we do about with young people here. Remember, we concluded by saying the Islamic school is not doing the job, and something needs to be done. Let's start with the brother in the back. Yes.
I just had a question about loving the country. Is there a hadith where it says loving your motherland, it's from Iman? Is there a hadith?
That's not a hadith. That's a saying that is consistent with the teachings of Islam. In Islam, brother, it's not everything requires evidence. Everything that is haram requires evidence. Otherwise, things are halal unless proven otherwise. I told you that loving own country is a natural feeling. Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, when he left Mecca, he expressed those feelings. Why? Because that's his homeland. And when he heard Bilal making a poem about Mecca in Medina, he told him, please, stop, because Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was feeling the sad being away from his homeland. So the evidence for this, again, Islam never suppresses natural feeling. Loving own country is a natural feeling. Where the confusion came from is from loyalty being defined as loyalty to Allah, and that's it. As if to be loyal to Allah and loyal to your country, as if they are contradictory. We're saying it's exactly the opposite. Islam asks you to dedicate your life to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah does not need anything from us. Allah wants you to take care of your people and your country. Because if the mission of Islam is Islah, it means that when you dedicate your life to Allah, Allah will send you back to take care of your people and your country. How will you be motivated to serve a country that you don't feel you belong to? So it's essential for the mission of Islam. The sense of belonging is critical, because without it, people will not be motivated to serve their own country. Yes.
There's no hadith that says that forbids loving the other country, number one.
Absolutely.
So by virtue, by not forbidding it, its meaning is allowed or encouraged. And also when said our Prophet ﷺ sent the messengers of other countries, told them to teach them. You cannot teach unless you get involved, you get engaged. You have compassion. You know the place meaning country. So by virtue of not having the hadith that requires you to love the country, you have to look at the other side. There is no hadith that says that do not love the country. So by virtue, you have to love it.
The reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent messenger from their own people is this: because you'll be much more motivated to guide and to serve the place where you are born. So all messengers were sent from their own people. Why? Because that gives that extra incentive. Yes, we have a religious obligation to do good and to improve things, but there will be an extra incentive if I'm doing it for my people and for my country. If we don't have that sense of belonging, we lose this incentive. And one of the problems that we're suffering from nowadays is that we don't emphasize this compassion and patriotism. And then we charge people religiously. So if you charge a young person religiously without channels, what's going to end up happening?
Explosion.
Person will explode, will be confused, will be withdrawn, will end up with falling in extremism. But if you open those channels, regardless of how much you charge the person religiously, what's going to end up happening? The more you charge him religiously, the more he will do, or she will do for their country and for their people. Why? Because you have made sure that the channels for constructive action are open, and then charge people, regardless of how much you charge them, they're going to end up doing more. But if you block those channels, if you tell people this is not your country, this is not a Muslim, these are non-Muslims, this is a kafir society, so you block your channels, those channels, and then you charge them religiously, no wonder you're going to end up with what happened here and what happened in other places. Why? Because, again, you are charging people religiously without opening channels for that energy to be channeled in a constructive way. That's why I emphasize this concept of patriotism and compassion. And we have to teach our, especially future generations. These are your people, this is your country. It's not true that Muslim can be loyal only to country that is Muslim, because that's the problem. Most people, they have in mind this is not a Muslim country. Now, are you saying that if Muslims in all societies that are not majority Muslims, they cannot be faithful citizens? That's not true. So someone who's born in India should be loyal to Pakistan? Why? Somebody who's born here should be loyal to another country? No, you can't. That's your country. I mean, I know it's going to be difficult for our generation, because there is a problem with our generation that we spend half of our life somewhere else. We're born and raised somewhere else, and then we came to spend the other half in this country. That's going to be difficult transition. But all what I'm saying, that let's end this problem with this generation. What's the future of Islam in this country? Who are the future of Islam? Immigrant?
Young people.
People who are born and raised here. And who else? People who converted, or people who were born and raised as Muslims here. These, they don't know any other country. So if you tell them that this is not your country, you're going to raise a generation of stateless people who don't belong anywhere. And that's very unfair to raise people with no sense of belonging anywhere. As I said last time, there is nothing wrong with telling people about their roots. You should be encouraged to tell people about their roots. But whether we like it or not, that's their country. They're not going to belong to any other country in which they didn't live in, or they don't know. Yes.
The idea of not proselytizing and be like a Jehovah's Witness is very appealing.
Which one appealing? To do it or not to do it?
Not to do it.
Okay.
But I thought that I was not doing the right thing. And because Allah said, "Ballu anni wa law a'lam." Now that concept is in my mind. And there is this other concept which you said, that you're full of compassion and you should treat others, the kuffar, the non-believers, as if they are your brothers in humanity.
Not as if, they are.
They are, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And if you see your kid is doing something wrong, you said, you will correct him. Right? So at the same time, I have this other concept that I see, that this brother in humanity is doing the wrong thing, he's going to hell. So I have an obligation to give him the message. In a sense, I should deliver the message. I also like the idea that delivering the message indirectly by seeing what you do and be a good person, and that's an indirect message. So these ideas are like, should you not, if you really love them and they're your brothers in humanity, shouldn't you save them? If you didn't, wouldn't he in Akhirah say, I know you, you didn't tell me about this?
You're raising a very good question, but believe me, that's the situation that you described is very hypothetical. If you interact with people and you cultivate a relationship, before you know it, they will be asking you about your religion. It's very automatic, especially if we represent Islam in the best possible way. Nowadays, by the way, sometimes you may hate something and probably something good can come out of it. These terrorist attacks are all bad or evil. But nowadays it's increased the curiosity of people to be asking you. So your friends will be asking why this is happening, what's going on, etc. So before you know it, when you interact with people and cultivate relationships, real relationships, they will be asking you about your faith. Just be prepared to do it when it happens. When it happens. But to force it, a lot of time it backfires. Especially we live in a society where, religion and politics are not the things that you should be talking about. That's how people are conditioned here. So if you want to do it, you look strange, and probably you'll be pushed back. So the best thing is just be yourself, interact with people, wait for the opportunity, and I'm telling you, it will come. Sooner rather than later, people will be asking you about your faith. Yes.
Going back to the pride of one's country and how that does not contradict with serving Allah. It's a comment that I would like you to respond to it, is that many times one is struggling that these two are contradicting each other. And sometimes it becomes a point of accusation that you are now committing shirk because you are putting country or loving a country or a group or a government, and now you're giving that as a priority to your duty to Allah.
Very good. First of all, let's distinguish between country and government. You have all the right to oppose a government, even a regime. So there is government, a higher level is a regime, and then we're talking about state, and then we're talking about the country. So we have to distinguish between the two. Everybody has the right to oppose a government and want to change it. Everybody has the right to oppose a regime. Once we get to the state, then we have to be very careful. Because states that collapses, it's not easy to rebuild. You need to see Somalia, now Yemen is in the way, Syria, unfortunately Iraq. States that collapses, it's not easy to rebuild. So, government and regimes, you feel free to oppose and to be against and even to work for changing it. Once we reach a state, then we have to be very careful. Country, that's a completely different story. Why? Why loving your own country does not contradict being faithful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Because if you properly understand Islam, what's the mission of Islam?
Islam.
So you serving Allah by serving people and country. When you make your country better, when you make your people better, that's the best way to serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I asked how much time you're going to spend praying?
1 hour a day, max.
Maximum. That's if your prayers are very high quality. That's what. But Allah is asking us to worship Him 24 hours a day. So where is the other 23 hours? It's serving Allah by serving creation and societies and countries. That's how you serve Allah indirectly. So there is no contradiction whatsoever. Allah loves to see this country prosperous. Allah loves to see this country free of crimes. Allah loves to see this country free of poverty. Allah loves to see this country free of homelessness. Allah loves to see this country more fair, more just, more morally sound, more prosperous. So if you do that, you're serving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are not country. Now, when we have to be careful and stick to the limits, you cannot serve your country at the expense of other people, other countries. That's the extreme. That's the chauvinism. That's not patriotism. That's excessive. When you serve your own country at the expense of other country or other people, that's not allowed. Can't do that. Or when in serving your country, you violate the teachings of Islam. Now, some people say gambling can be good for economy, even though I have no doubt that anything that Allah has forbidden is harmful. whether we see it or not. Sooner or later, people, and now there are statistics that tells you otherwise. But because it is haram, then I will not do it. So I will not do something that is haram. But within the limits of haram, I put the interests of my country first. That's my understanding of a good Muslim. A good Muslim is a faithful citizen who will put the interests of their country first, within what is permissible Islamically. You don't exceed that. So, for me, when there is an issue being debated, what should I, how do I make a stand about it? First of all, I consult, check what Islam has to say about this. If the issue is haram, that's it, there is no more discussion. But if it falls within the permissible, then I will see what is the best interest of the country. That becomes my position, and I will advocate for it, and I will vote for the person who adopt that position, even if he is non-Muslim. Doesn't matter who is he, as long as the one who, when you elect a public official, you should choose the one who has the better agenda, and the one who will serve the county or the city or do the job for which he or she is elected, do it better than others. So there is absolutely no contradiction. And we are always talking that everything within the boundaries of Islam, never exceeded. So I put the interests of my country first. Everybody should do that. Within what Islam allows, within the international law. That's what people agree. There is a law here that people have to abide by. There is an international law that countries have to abide by. So I will not support an act that my country does, even if it is good for the country, that is in violation of international law or at the expense of other nations or other human or other country. No. You can't go to destroy another country to improve your economy. That's not something that we accept or we defend. We can oppose it, and you oppose it because it is in the best interest of the country. I keep always telling people that when you take a position as Muslim, you have to frame it in a way that is relevant to the public. The language of halal and haram, nobody understands here. Language of our brothers in Palestine or our brothers in Iraq, nobody understands here. That's not how it works. If you want to rally people, you have to frame it in a way that is in the best interest of this country. Siding with Israel all the way blindly, it's not in the best interest of this country. It's causing us a lot of problems. Waging a war on Iraq is not in the best interest of the country. So we're very destructive, is what it was very bad even for the economy. In addition to the fact that morally it is wrong. It was built on lies. So when you're being loyal, it doesn't mean support government. You may, the one who opposes the government may be more patriot and more loyal to the country than the one who support the government if on a wrong policy.
So what you're saying is we can be loyal to this country, raise our kids to be loyal to this country, but at the same time we can raise them not to forget that Palestine is being hijacked by the Zionists.
Absolutely.
And we can start a movement here, some kind of lobbies, to support our brothers.
No question whatsoever.
And just
no
like
question.
Brother Salahuddin, he was not an Arab, and he didn't say, I'm just going to work for the Kurds,
No question about
the
it.
Muslims around him, and he wanted to liberate.
That's why I differentiate between country and government. You can oppose many domestic policies that are wrong in this country, and many foreign policies that are bad and that are wrong, but while being loyal to the country. Why? Because these policies are morally wrong, and they are also bad for the country in the long run. They create enemies. We're siding with the oppressors against the victims. That's morally wrong. It's against the American values. But that's the language that can resonate with people, not the language of our brothers and sisters or the language of halal and haram, and that language will not will not click. You have to speak a language that people understand. I remember we have a case when the governor of Maryland wanted to expand gambling. We put together some effort to oppose that. And we went into mosque and started talking about it. And to our surprise, most Muslims were surprised why we talk about these issues. Because they're not Muslim issues. What is a Muslim issue, usually? Either immigration or civil rights. And this is not civil rights, that's not immigration. Why you're talking about? And we reminded people, by the way, that's a munkar. Gambling is haram, so we should be the first ones to work against it. Anyway, but how did we frame our message? To rally people against this. Did we tell them that it's haram or mention verses in Quran? Nobody will listen to you. You're going to be speaking to yourself. We went, we did our homework. We brought some statistics on how when gambling is expanded, education suffers, neighborhoods suffers, crime rate increase. These are statistics that are available. When you put these statistics together and you promote it, people, you can rally people behind the cause. So even though we came from the perspective that it is haram, and we know that because it is haram, it is harmful, before even looking at those statistics, we know anything that Allah has forbidden is bad for people and for societies. So we're coming from that angle. But when it comes to trying to rally people, you have to translate this into a language that can resonate with people and people understand. Yes?
Can you define for us the definitions of government, regime, state and country?
All right. Regime is, for example, the structure that is built on the constitution of this country. Like monarchy in some countries, republic in another country, parliamentary regime, etc. That's the regime. The structure of government is the people who run. These are the individuals. So government can be replaced by election. You elect other people, then a new government comes. Regime can be changed either by changing the constitution or by revolution. That's how to change regime. State is that you can change the government, you can change the regime, and you keep the state. State does not change. The institutions of the state are there, like the police, military, etc. The different institutions of the state are there. Just to compare, Libya is a failed state. Now, Somalia is a failed state. There is no state whatsoever. So that's not change of regime. The recent revolutions, like in Tunisia, for example, regime was changed. It's a new constitution, regime was changed. The state did not collapse. So that state is constitution that keeps people together. Regime is the type of political structure. Government is the people who run temporary, who are elected to run. So government, regimes, states. Most people in the Muslim world, they don't distinguish between the two. So if they oppose the government, they end up fighting the state. So trying to destroy the economy. Why? Because they are opposing to the government. You can oppose government and try to change it. Nothing wrong with this. You can also don't like the regime and work to change it by calling for change of constitution or even change of the whole structure. But don't fight the state, because states that collapse, they are not easy to rebuild. And we have seen Somalia collapsed in 1990, I believe. Iraq in 2003 collapsed completely. States, once it collapses, it becomes chaos, very chaos. So we have to learn in our culture to learn that you have the right to oppose a regime, you have the right to oppose a government, but you should never try to destroy the state, and you should never try to harm the country.
You told us before, we need to take the good stuff from this society. We are in the holiday season, and the Muslim people, they are not doing this aspect. In this country, in the holiday season, they tip the mailman, they tip the trash collector, they tip the pizza delivery. And unfortunately, the Muslim people are the worst people in tipping. And I think we need to take, you laugh, but the people, They ask why Muslim people, they don't tip us.
Quran tells us, خذ العفو وأمر بالعرف. خذ العفو in Surah Al-Araf, وأمر بالعرف. Take from people whatever they're willing to give, and promote that which is common. And al-urf, which is what they call, norm, social norm. The social norm in many schools of thoughts is source of tashri'ah. Source of tashri'ah means source of legislation. So whatever common in society, if it is not haram, it becomes something that is encouraged. But in Islam, does not fight habits that are not bad. So if you come in a society and you find people are used to do certain things, that's a social norm. And there is nothing in Islam that is against it. Especially some of these acts will be actually good even from Islamic perspective. Tipping or help or giving more to somebody who's working, that's not something that Islam will forbid. I personally believe that culture, anything in culture that does not contradict to Islam should be embraced by Muslim, or at least shouldn't be fought. Shouldn't be fighting against culture that is not contradictory with Islam. If people are serious about rooting themselves, and I honestly believe that there is no future for Islam in this country until it becomes indigenous faith. As long as it is perceived as a foreign religion, it remains with us. So the only way this deen will take roots in this country, only when it becomes indigenous. Part of becoming indigenous is to embrace cultural elements in the society that does not contradict the deen, that makes them embrace cultural elements. So if Muslims are serious about rooting their faith in this country, should learn the culture of this country. And by the way, this is going to happen whether we like it or not. I mean, most of this issue is going to be with this generation, by the way. Especially if we leave them alone, future generation, they will be okay. Now, we are interfering with their identity and we are creating some identity issues for them. Otherwise, they will be okay, because that's the natural things. The nature of things is cultural elements will be embraced by everybody who live in that country. If you think about it, in any Muslim culture, in any Muslim country, think about it. You will find a number of habits and cultural things that we do that are not from Islam. Right? We cook certain food in certain time. They have nothing to do with it. There is nothing in Islam that tells us to cook this at the end of the year, the beginning of the year, there are a number of things that are cultural, but these, because they don't contradict their religion, they can coexist and live with faith with no problem. Where the problem came from? With this very rigid, strict version of Islam that made everything haram and everything bid'ah and everything wrong until proven otherwise. That's what created all the problems. Otherwise, Islam is the deen of fitrah. It's consistent with the nature of people. And Islam, wherever it went, it has never contradicted or fought with the indigenous culture. Actually, it has meshed and fused smoothly with the local culture. And that's how Islam succeeds. Islam succeeds is not by importing a version of Islam from somewhere else. Islam succeeds by the pure Islam mixing with the local culture to produce something unique. So a Muslim American life will be different than a Saudi Muslim life, or Egyptian or Pakistani or African or anybody. And that's very natural. Why? Because Islam, the biggest part in Islam is the part that is flexible and left for people to manage. أنتم أعلموا بأمور دنياكم, Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam was responded. So Islam is a guidance. It has a number of things that are mentioned in details, either prescribed in details or forbidden in details. But this is the smallest part in Islam. The largest part is left for ijtihad. Look, for example, political system. Is there a political system in Islam? No. Anybody who tells you Khilafah and Khilafah, there is no political system in Islam. And they can discuss with anybody who says otherwise. Just look at the first 4 rulers. The way Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu was appointed, different than the way Umar ibn Khattab was appointed. Was different than the way Uthman ibn Affan was appointed. So there is no political system. There is political principles in Islam. Justice, consultation, leadership by consent. Anybody who's going to be in charge has to get the consent of people. How do you do it? That's left for people to come up with a system. Is there economic system in Islam? No, there is no economic system in Islam. Islam doesn't tell you that you have the economy has to be agriculture or industrial or to focus on tourism or anything. It doesn't tell you anything. There are guidance. There are guidance and principles in Islam. Mostly guidance and principle. In some aspects, you find Islam more details. Like, for example, the inheritance, much more detailed. Family life, marriage and divorce, more detailed, etc. But the largest part in Islam is there is some guidance and some principles, and it is left for people to apply them to their reality. Is this something that makes Islam diminish Islam? Actually, it's the opposite. That's what makes Islam valid for all times and all places. It's that flexibility. It's that built-in flexibility that makes it valid for all times and all places. We made Islam rigid. Islam is very flexible. Islam should be ahead of life. It's very flexible, but we made it rigid. Why? When we stopped ijtihad, when we stopped renewal, when we stopped reflection on verses, getting new meanings of Islam. Once we start relying on the work done by people before us, then we froze, Islam frozen. Islam become frozen because of our work. But other than that, the ideal situation is what? The ideal situation is for Muslims to be engaged in their societies, so that they take the teachings of Islam and infuse them in society. And then the challenge and the problems of societies will force you to go and dig out new guidance from the Quran. That's why when Muslims start to be engaged, Islam freezes. And Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, one of the greatest scholars, great Sahabi, one of the most knowledgeable Sahabi, what did he say? He said, Al-Quran yufassiruhu zaman. That the Quran is explained by the evolution of time. Why? Because the more people evolve, the more they face new problems, that will force them to go and dig out of the Quran new solutions and new guidance. That's the exercise that we haven't been doing for a long time. And it's a long overdue to do that. Rely on the sources of this deen. Anything else is extra reading. You know, when you take a class, there is a textbook and there is extra reading. The textbook is the Quran and the authentic Sunnah of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Anything else, we can benefit from it. But we shouldn't be relying on the work done by other people in other places. Why? Because they face different problems. Some of the problems they face, we don't face them anymore. Some of the problems we face, they did not face them. So, for me, when I say that we shouldn't rely on the work done in the history of Islam, it doesn't mean that I don't respect these scholars. I admire these scholars. But these scholars did their homework for their time. To take their product and try to apply it now is what? Is doing what? It's like giving the same medicine for different patients. It's somebody who's giving the same medicine for patients who have different illnesses, different problems. You cannot do that. Islam has to be customized. And I keep mentioning how this deen was customized in the early days of Islam and before Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. How the deen of Allah was customized before Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. by Allah sending new messenger with new message to those people. After Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there is no messenger. How this deen will be customized? By Muslims working to develop a new understanding of Islam that is suitable for their time. That's what we are missing. Develop a fresh understanding of Islam, and develop a fresh understanding and keep it fresh. Because even if you develop a fresh understanding of Islam and you don't keep it fresh, it will also freeze. Allah promised to keep this deen, to preserve it. But He assigned us the job to keep it relevant. Allah promised and fulfilled His promise that the source of this deen are preserved. So they were not altered. So what is our job? Is to preserve the deen? No, it is preserved. Allah promised and did. It's to keep it fresh and relevant. That's our job. It's not easy, but that's the only way. It's to keep this deen fresh and relevant, always alive, never allowed to freeze, never allowed to be outdated. You know the spread of communism and atheism in Muslim world? Why? You know the roots of this? When Muslims allowed this deen to be obsolete and outdated, new generations start looking for alternative. When people could not find answers to their problems, answers to their questions, solution to their problems in Islam, they go to the scholar in the masjid and they find them out of touch, totally irrelevant, talking about things that happened centuries ago. Then these people start looking for alternatives. So the spread of all these ideologies among Muslims are because Muslims fail to keep the deen inspiring, fresh, and relevant for future generations. And that's the same dilemma we're facing today. The reason nowadays young Muslims are abandoning this religion, abandoning Islam, or falling in extremism, because we failed to present them with a version of Islam that is relevant, fresh, inspiring, which is the true Islam. So one generation failed to do its homework, the next generation will be suffering. That's what is happening nowadays. And not only that, not only we're not helping future generation, we're actually transferring to them some of our baggage. The identity issue. People who are born and raised here should have no identity issue. We are creating an identity crisis in them. So not only we're not helping, now every generation should sort out its problems and transfer what? Transfer lessons to future generations. That's how nations improve. Now what we're transferring is baggage. We're transferring problems.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar,
Inshallah, a couple of announcements before we conclude. By the way, we're going to come to the question of working with young people. I have some ideas I want to run by you next time, inshallah, and have solid discussion about practical ways we can do to salvage generation. Most of it is unfortunately was lost, but inshallah we'll discuss some practical ideas on how to do this next time. Now, if you are not on the email list or you are not in touch, can you contact Brother Stamatis? Stand up, please, raise your hand. Talk to him, he'll put you on the list. The reason we need you to be on the list because I prefer to get some questions and comments during the week so that we gear the session or the class towards your concerns and your comments and your questions. That way we can make it more interactive. And also we can stay in touch during the week through the email group and Facebook page. So please make sure that to give your email and to connect with Brother Stamatis. Any other announcement?
I guess next week would be the week we had projected for the workshop. I think we're still just waiting on a time and a date in particular.
Is this a good idea to have it next week? We're thinking about one-day workshop, like from 10 to Maghrib, where we really cover a lot of things that we've been covering for months now. Do you think it's a good idea next week, or?
Well, it's suitable for me, but because of the holidays, I'm suspecting
so we need to
some
push it
people will
when
be
people come back.
traveling on it
Push
because
it when
they'll be
people come
combining
back.
the holidays.
I don't know, for us, I don't know. For me, I think next week is perfect because we are, as Muslims, we're not traveling, we're not going anywhere on this.
Can we have show of hand? Saturday, next Saturday is a good idea. What time? 10 to
Maghrib.
10 to Maghrib? 10 to Maghrib next Saturday, inshallah. 10 to Maghrib. Inshallah, we'll work on the agenda and you will be informed about what the workshop is going to be about and how it's going to be structured, inshallah. All right? So otherwise, still we're going to see you next Sunday, inshallah. And we're going to continue these discussion again. If you find this useful, just invite a friend or bring somebody on board so that we maximize the benefit, inshallah. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك اشهد ان لا اله الا انت استغفرك واتوب اليك سبحان ربك رب العزه عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين